All right, welcome back everyone for another deep dive. And today we're going on a bit of a flight. Well, not literally.
Yeah, no packing required for this one.
Nope. We're taking a look at the Montagu's Harrier. They might be thinking, Harrier, like those jump jets.
Well, it's definitely a bird of prey. Sharp talons, keen eyesight, the whole 9 yards. But instead of vertical takeoffs, this bird is known for its smooth, almost effortless glides. It's actually named after a pretty famous naturalist, George Montagu.
So like those old school explorers who travel the world documenting new species.
Exactly. Montagu was a British naturalist back in the late 1700s and early 1800s, a real pioneer in the field of ornithology. He even wrote one of the first comprehensive guides to British birds.
Wow. Okay, so he obviously had a thing for birds. But what makes this Harrier named after him so special? I mean, there are lots of birds of prey out there, right?
Well, for starters, the Montagu's Harrier is a real looker. I mean, the males have this pale gray plumage, almost silver, and when the sun hits it just right,
Oh, I can imagine.
it's stunning. And with those black wingtips and the bright white underparts, they're just elegant.
And what about the females? Are they just as flashy?
The females are a bit different. They're actually larger than the males and have more of a brownish, streaky pattern.
That makes sense, right? It's
Cool.
camouflage and all that.
Yeah, it's perfect for blending in with the ground while they're nesting. It's called sexual dimorphism, by the way. Those differences in appearance between males and females. And it's not just for looks, it often helps with survival.
Like you said, the female's camouflage protects her and the eggs. And maybe the male's brighter colors help attract a mate.
Exactly. So it's all about survival and passing on those genes. Speaking of which, these birds aren't exactly homebodies.
Oh, you mean their migrations? I did read something about that.
They're quite the travelers, breed in Europe and Asia during the summer months, and then, when things start to cool down,
Off they go.
thousands of kilometers south. Some even go all the way to Africa and the Indian subcontinent for the winter.
Wow, that's a serious commute. They don't mess around with like a short hop to Florida or anything.
Nope, these guys are committed to the long haul. And it's pretty remarkable how they navigate over such huge distances.
I was just thinking that. It's not like they had GPS, right?
Well, not in the way we think of it. Scientists believe they use a combination of things like the stars, the Earth's magnetic field, and even landmarks. They're incredibly skilled navigators.
I bet that journey is just, I don't know, breathtaking,
Yeah,
but also pretty dangerous, I imagine.
absolutely. They face all sorts of risks, from storms and predators to habitat loss and dwindling food sources along the way. And speaking of food, let's talk about how they hunt.
All right, lay it on me. This is the part I always find fascinating.
So picture this. You're out in a wide open field, grasslands, heathlands, maybe some wetlands,
Got it.
and you see this Montagu's Harrier gliding low, wings held in this shallow V shape. It's scanning the ground with those piercing eyes.
And then, bam, it dives.
Well, not quite so dramatic. It'll often hover for a moment, almost like it's deciding on the best target. And then swoop, a quick, decisive move, and it snatches up its prey.
So it's not just about speed. They really think about it.
Exactly. It's a combination of stealth, strategy, and precision. And they're not picky eaters either. They'll go after voles, mice, small birds, even reptiles and insects.
Kind of like nature's multi-tool, adaptable to whatever's around.
Right. That adaptability helps them survive, especially during those long migrations when food can be hard to come by. And of course, they play a vital role in keeping those populations in check.
Makes sense. A natural form of pest control. So, where do these birds settle down when it's time to raise a family?
Well, unlike some birds of prey that nest high up in trees, Montagu's harriers choose to nest on the ground.
Oh, that's interesting. Why would they do that? It seems kind of risky.
They usually look for dense vegetation or even build their nests within crops like wheat or barley for concealment.
I guess that makes sense for camouflage, but wouldn't that make them vulnerable too? Especially with all the farming that goes on.
Unfortunately, you're right. Ground nesting does make them particularly vulnerable to habitat loss, disturbance from farming, and even accidental destruction of nests during harvesting. It's a real concern.
Oh, that's sad. Okay, so tell me about their family life. How does it all work?
Well, the breeding season usually starts in late spring. The female lays between 3 and 5 eggs, and she's the one who incubates them.
And the male, what's his role?
He's the provider. The male will hunt and bring food back for the female, what she's tending to the nest.
Oh, what a good dad. So how long until those little chicks pop out?
The eggs hatch after about a month, and then the chicks grow pretty quickly. They're ready to leave the nest, or fledge, as it's called, after about 30 days.
Wow, that's fast. But I guess they've got a lot to learn in a short amount of time.
You're telling me they're still dependent on their parents for several weeks after they fledge, learning those essential survival skills like hunting and how to navigate. Think of it like their version of flight school.
Huh. I love that.
Ah.
But speaking of challenges, I know you said earlier that Montagu's Harriers are facing some pretty big threats. What are the biggest concerns?
Well, as you pointed out, ground nesting makes them especially vulnerable, and habitat loss is a major problem, the biggest culprit. It's often changes in land use due to agriculture.
I guess with more and more land being used for farming, there's less space for these birds to nest and hunt.
That's right, and modern farming practices like early harvesting and the use of pesticides can also be devastating to ground nesting birds.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine how they can survive if their nests are constantly being destroyed.
Exactly. And sadly, there are additional threats like illegal hunting and poisoning, although they are less common than habitat loss.
Oh, that's terrible. Okay, so the picture is pretty grim, isn't it?
Yeah.
But are there any conservation efforts in place to help these amazing birds?
There are, actually, and they're crucial for the species' survival. There are programs focused on nest protection, which involves things like working with farmers to identify and mark nests before harvesting.
Oh, that's smart.
Then there's habitat restoration, where they're working to create and maintain suitable habitats for the harriers.
It sounds like a lot of people working hard to protect these birds.
They are. And there are also efforts to promote wildlife-friendly farming practices, which is a win-win for both the birds and the farmers.
So there's hope for the Montagu's Harrier, right?
Absolutely. But it's going to take continued awareness, collaboration, and conservation efforts to ensure these magnificent birds continue to grace our skies.
It really makes you appreciate the interconnectedness of it all. Everything we do impacts the natural world, for better or worse.
That's exactly right. So, to our listeners, we leave you with this thought. The Montagu's Harrier is more than just a bird. It's a symbol of resilience, adaptation, and the delicate balance of our ecosystems.
And knowing what we know now about the challenges they face, what steps can we take individually and collectively to help protect them and other vulnerable species? That's something worth pondering, wouldn't you say?
I think that's an excellent question for everyone to consider. The fate of these birds, in a way, reflects our own. What choices will we make?
That's a great point to end on. Thank you for that.
Mm.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Until then.